Hello, everyone. Welcome to Corte Madera Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee of March 9th, 2026. We have a call to order, a roll call, and a salute to the flag. So first, I'll start with the roll call or call to order. Yeah.
Committee member Strasser, committee member Garza.
Here.
All right. Vice Chair Faust,
Here.
member Zeiger. Here. All right. And we do not have Chair Ravazio and committee member Laginati.
Okay. We'll go on to the roll call, right? Or is that was the roll call? Okay. So next we go on to the salute to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next item is number 2, open time for public regarding non-agenda items. If any members of the public, whether present or on Zoom, wish to do public comment, now is your time to speak. Any members wish to speak on any items not on the agenda? Okay, seeing no comments, we'll move on to 3, approve action minutes of May 2nd, 2025 and November 10th, 2025 meeting. So a roll call or a vote for that. Do we all approve of the minutes? You guys have reviewed that? Okay, a first and a second. So next, committee member reports. If any members of the committee have any reports, they have anything they saw that was a cause for concern, any infrastructure issues, or now is your time.
Is there an opportunity just to agendize a presentation from the Alto Tunnel Committee?
Yes, that's definitely possible. We can go over the recent county studies, I think done in 2016 and 2017, and find a path forward towards funding, which is the big question.
It's Warren Wells offered to present any of their latest progress that they've made. So he was willing to come in and talk on behalf of the Alto Tunnel.
Sure. Yeah, there will be a moment later on to for future agenda items.
Okay.
And we can work on that. So any other committee reports? What else? Okay. So next we go to number 5, presentations. We'll start with the Corte Madera Police Authority e-motorcycle and e-bike enforcement update. It looks like we have an officer present. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, if you can make sure the mic's on.
All right, again, thanks for having me tonight. I'm Sergeant Jeff Peterson. I've been with Central Marin Police Authority for about 9 years, worked a variety of roles, and I've been a Corte Madera resident and currently Larkspur resident. So not only have I been charged with kind of enforcement and ideas around e-bikes, I've definitely lived it being near Redwood High School with my family. So I've been a reporting party, but also trying to be part of the solution, and I'm here to provide an update. We continue to work closely with the superintendents and principals at our 2 high schools and middle schools regarding students riding to and from school on legal and illegal electric vehicles. Our school resource officer, Officer Dixon, was involved in the investigation and enforcement of illegal mopeds, motorcycles on and off campus throughout the first half of this school year. In October of 2025, CMPA provided further messaging regarding the legality of e-bikes to every parent in our jurisdiction via schools' email lists. This messaging was also sent out via Nixle and Nextdoor to our general communities. This letter and other letters we've sent to all the parents in our jurisdiction since 2004 can be found on our website. Our organization held a department-wide e-bike training for all of the officers regarding general e-bike vehicle code laws, as well as the adoption of the new e-bike ordinances in Marin County. We've had patrol focus on e-bike issues and have had enhanced enforcement since the start of the school year, which I know is, several months gone so far. But we continue to charge our officers with enforcing e-bike laws. We conducted several e-bike special operations where we had officers come in on overtime to specifically enforce e-bike laws. We noticed over this time period that enforcement became more difficult as we were seeing less of the illegal e-bikes on the road and less riding behavior that was violating the vehicle code. Over the last 6 months of 2025 and into 2026, there were 7 accidents involving an e-bike in CMPA jurisdiction. 5 accidents involved adult riders. 1 involved a minor. And then one of the accidents, the rider was unknown due to the fact that they fled the scene. We made 74 traffic stops on electric motorcycles over the last 6 months. 7 e-motorcycles or e-mopeds were towed and held by Central Marin Police Authority for being vehicles that were not street legal vehicles. 2 parents of minors who were riding e-motorcycles were cited for allowing a minor to operate a non-street legal vehicle, which was a new code that was adopted last year, which has been a helpful tool in the enforcement. We continue to work hard and address the illegal e-bike problems in our jurisdiction. I've personally seen a dramatic improvement over the last 12 months in the number of illegal e-bikes on the road and driving habits of those riding them. That being said, we did have some rain in December and January, and now that it's nice out, I'm sure that we'll have to boost our enforcement efforts and provide reminders to our officers. I attribute this to education we've continued to conduct over the last few years and the ramp up of enforcement over the second half of the last year. And to that, I'll just say that our leadership, to include sergeants of our 4 patrol teams and our school resource officer, have presented this community-oriented problem that we've been facing the last couple of years in a way where we have more buy-in than I saw over the last few years when it kind of became a new thing. And that's definitely helped us in our enforcement efforts. That's all I have, unless you want more specific stats on traffic data, but that's kind of what we've been doing. It's what we're going to continue to do now that the weather's getting nicer through the spring and then into the summer.
Thank you for your presentation. Does anyone else have any comments on this or would have any questions for the officer?
I guess a question around I know that they're not allowed on campus, and so they've been parking, Heatherwood Park and stashing them in other places. Is that still an area of enforcement where they're parking them as well?
It makes it difficult, but what we have done, and through our school resource officer and our good relationship with the schools, the campus supervisors have been doing their patrols and identifying these bikes that are typically locked up in the woods or off the bike path, especially near Redwood High School and Hall Middle School, and trying to identify them and then let us know so that we could contact the parents and or the student. Because what I have found is that, despite being a parent of 4, I'm sure there's some things I don't know that my kids do, but it often comes as a surprise, and just the education and knowledge of the law and kind of their actions in it has been helpful. So we'll use the campus supervisors to try and identify those issues, but they've also done a good job of identifying the bikes without pedals, the actual electric motorcycles. If they're parked on campus, we've actually been locking those bikes up and then taking action.
Great, thanks.
I had a question. Thank you, by the way. It's a wonderful report. Good to hear. Are there going to be more instances where you're blasting emails and educating, the public, basically?
Yeah, I'll say that I think we hit it pretty hard, in August, September, and October. And, whether it's weather or people started getting the message, I as a citizen and, police officer here for a while now, definitely saw a decrease. And I'm sure some of that's weather related, but I'm confident that come the end of this month into April and May, as we approach summer, we will send out messaging, whether it's through our school resource officer or the chief or myself as a public information officer on Nixle and Nextdoor, and continue to send reminders.
Great, thank you.
I'm wondering if you have done outreach in terms of bike shops and the e-bikes they're selling, or rather electric motorcycles. I know there's a big misunderstanding between the two, and we should be explicit with, telling what is legal e-bike and what's not. And also, I would ask if you've ever gone to the PTA meetings for Redwood High School, or if that would be an unexplored venue that could have more fruition in terms of outreach, because there's dozens, sometimes hundreds of parents in one room, once a month, and word of mouth, I think, can sometimes be a lot more effective in a small town than social media and stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. And I can't speak to visiting bike shops. Like I myself have not done that. I know that we've discussed it. I'm just not positive if it happened or not, but it's definitely something I'll bring up. As far as PTA meetings, I know our school resource officer, during the hours that he works, attends a lot of like administrative level meetings. But as far as PTA meetings, I don't know if we've had a presence there. But like you said, I think it would be something that we definitely should do and probably plan to do at the start of the school year. Would be kind of a good way to do that. And I'm writing this down because these are the notes I'll take back.
Okay. Yeah, I remember initially applying for this position on BPAC a few years back, and initially they didn't pick me, but when I applied a second time, they did. And I remember watching those chief of police annual reports about, what's the biggest form of crime in Corte Madera and Central Marin. And he says, really, it's all mostly traffic violations, people speeding, any and all forms of vehicular violence, and the more we can do to stop that. I know, safety doesn't work on the honor system. It has to be mandated through road design, and you can't just put up signs and beg for people to drive carefully, as we've all noticed, the narrower our roads are, sometimes the slower people go. And I remember in that chief of police report, he said the biggest calls were village and town center. And there's just something about town hall all the way to the Tiburon border on San Clemente and Paradise. It's like our highway. And I've regularly see, Teslas going over 90 miles an hour on San Clemente and Paradise. And, you can only do so much speed traps with moto cops. That's very expensive to have cops in every corners. And the moral of the story I'm getting to is the more we do with speeding, with reducing vehicular speeding, we can reduce with electric motorcycle speeding. So.
I completely agree with you, and I agree with the chief stating that that's still our biggest community issue in Corte Madera, Larkspur, and San Anselmo. I think that role of like a patrol supervisor like myself has been trying to explain that to especially like new police officers. A lot of people that get into this, career thinking that they're going to, be catching like, armed robbers and, people stealing cars. And, we've had our fair share of property crime to include like auto burglaries and catalytic converters, and it kind of goes in waves. But the common denominator has always been traffic. So it's something we're doing as patrol supervisors to, have them buy into like, we need this enforcement. And something that has really helped, and the statistics show this over the last year compared to the year before, is the kind of like revamp of our traffic unit, which is still continue to grow. Because if we can allow, our Corte Madera officer, Larkspur officer, San Anselmo officer, patrol, sergeants and corporals to respond to calls for service, it frees up those traffic officers to really like create a high volume of traffic stops during those like peak hours of the morning and the afternoon. And over the last few months, I know our chief has spoken to it recently, but I've seen it as being effective. And it's something that, that unit is still going to grow as our recruitment and retention seemingly is improving, and we can dedicate more resources to specifically like traffic related calls and enforcing speed and stop sign and e-bike enforcement. So I do think we're like trending up as far as the buy-in from the officers, but then also just our staffing is allowed to really dedicate more officers to specifically enforcing those laws.
Yeah, I recall, in the 90s and 2000s, back when it was Twin Cities Police, seeing people getting pulled over at least a few times a day in Corte Madera, and everyone warning each other, drive slow, you might get a ticket. It's not worth the points on your license. And also referencing these peak hours of traffic speeding. Imagine yourself, when you're late, you're on the road with everyone else who's late. So they're all speeding, doing dangerous lane changes. So, focusing your enforcement on rush hour, school commuting, that will have the most dividends. When people are late, they'll break any law to get anywhere. So, thank you for your presentation.
It's my pleasure. And, just to close, we have a lot of plans to continue to bring it back to like what you said in the 90s and the 2000s, because as a citizen, I see it too. And I have a 16-year-old driver now. And, I just feel like there's a lot more buy-in and like dedication to the problem solving than I've seen in a while over these last couple of years, this year particularly.
Yes, I've said this before, but safe streets shouldn't be painted with the blood of innocent bicyclists, pedestrians, and motorists. We should be proactive instead of reactive. So thank you again.
Yep, my
Appreciate it.
pleasure. Thank you.
So moving on, we have oh, um, I'll defer to Nick here.
Yeah, and since Chris is on, I'm going to ask Chris.
Uh,
Presentations.
oh yeah, I'll be doing the TAM school crossing, but can you pull up the slides?
Yeah, no, sorry. There was a question about process, and can we have public comments during presentations, or is that limited to discussion items?
Oh, no, I believe we can do public comment. It's up to the VPAC, so however you want to handle it. But I think typically we do allow it if you want.
Yeah, I feel this is pertinent to community safety. So if anyone wants to join public comment, and we have 3 minutes for public comment, so feel free. Yes.
I believe under any public agenda that each item that the public has the opportunity to speak, whether it's a presentation or whatever. But in any event, Jim Robinson, 25 Ash, Corte Madera, just as a supplement to the great work that our police do relative to e-bike enforcement update. I brought this issue up at several meetings regarding the complete streets in Corte Madera. And one of the concerns I've noted is there's a variety of visibility issues related to some material, particularly trees and shrubs and so forth, that make visibility difficult for not only the people who are driving the streets, but those who are pedestrians and those who are trying to avoid the e-bikes. And I've mentioned this in a couple of meetings previously about a large tree that pretty much blinds the driver at the location of Hickory and the Neil Cummings School there where the crosswalk is. And I've experienced this many, many times because I drive that 3 or 4 times a day, where you drive up to the crosswalk and there are bikes shooting across that crosswalk there rather than slowing down and stopping. And the visibility is very difficult because of the tree there. And I think it's a simple solution. I would suggest that the town give consideration of removing or drastically trimming that tree so that there's greater visibility and we don't have any of these projected accidents that might occur as a result of the keep pedestrians as well as the driver of the bicycle as well as driver of the car safe in our community. It's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I will add to that before this meeting, I was going to present, a daylighting agenda item for crosswalk clearance. But yes, Nick will write that down to have DPW analyze that intersection and see if a tree crew can do some trimming. So thank you for your comment.
Yeah, I'll just add to if you're able to email us with some pictures of the exact location, that would be helpful so we can take a look. And also we have our Madera Gardens Complete Streets project coming up, and we're planning to do like complete streets and traffic calming measures, I believe at the location you're talking about. So should be improvements coming up.
Okay, so number 6, we have discussion items. A, review 2025 work plan accomplishments and approve 2026 work plan. And I think Nick is gonna headline this one.
Yeah, well, before that,
Actually, never mind. I skipped over this. My apologies. We have the presentation B, 2026 TAM School Crossing Guard recertification.
Yeah, I'm taking this one on so I can start while Nick pulls up the presentation. But so Tam, I believe we usually give an update when Tam is basically recertifying their crosswalk or their crossing guard program, which is roughly every 4 years. The next one has come up, and it's for 2026 to 2030. And basically, my understanding of the history of this is before Tam took over, it was just the various school districts were kind of putting out crossing guards where they thought it was kind of best, but there was no real system behind it. And so, as part of like the Measure A sales tax, one of the items was basically for TAM to receive funding to take over hiring and managing crossing guards throughout the entire county. So, this has been going on for a long time. I want to say maybe since 2010. But every year, they have more or less funding and can fund more or less crossing guards. So this year we've got these 4 locations. So 3 of them are kind of from the previous year, and they were able to get a little bit more money this year, so we have 1 new one. So Mohawk Avenue in front of Neil Cummins School, that was a previous one that will be brought back. Hickory Avenue near Mohawk Avenue at the bike path crossing. I believe that was the location that we were just discussing, actually. So there's a cross guard there for school. Um, and then the new one this year is going to be Redwood Avenue at Pixley Avenue, which is next to Town Park. And, there's a lot of students that cross there to get to Neil Cummins from the other direction. And then finally, Tamalpais Drive and Eastman Drive. That one, I'll go into this a little bit more on the next slide, but that one actually scored low. But in the past, the town has decided to basically swap that with another intersection because there's so much interest and public demand for that location. So Nick, you want to go to the next slide? So there's kind of a lot going on this slide, but basically. TAM ranks all the locations. There's like I forget how many the total is. 164 around the county, and they only have money to hire crossing guards for 87 of them. So basically, if whichever locations intersections are within the first top 87 get a crossing guard, everything below that does not. So for Corte Madera, we have 8, and basically 4 are in the program, 4 are not. And so the one exception here, so Spindrift Passage and Prince Royal Passage is technically that was in the program. However, we have decided to swap that one with Tamalpais Drive and Eastman Avenue just because of basically the public demand for a crossing guard there. So that's basically the one change that the town is planning to make, but otherwise we're following the recommendations of TAM. And so you can see on the right the ranking. So number 1 is basically like the highest ranked, and then it goes down from there. So just gives you an idea of how they decide, where to put crossing guards. But basically, just wanted to provide an update on what the plan will be for the next 4 years. Also at the very bottom, Paradise Drive and Seal Passage, the Corte Madera or Larkspur Corte Madera School District has paid for a crossing guard to be there in the past. We haven't heard if they're going to do that in the future, but potentially there may be one there as well. So with that, I'll just open up to any questions or comments or anything.
Thank you, Chris, for that presentation. I remember, I think a year or two ago, I had a talk with former head of DPW, RJ, about crosswalks and how I believe Spindrift Passage and Prince Royal Passage used to have a crossing guard, but RJ and the DPW, they put those bollards and daylighted and did the bulb outs off of Prince Royal. So, thus making that intersection safer essentially negated the need for a crossing guard. And I was
Yeah,
wondering
that's
if,
correct. A long time ago, we had a crossing guard there for many years. And then in the previous recertification, which was 23 to 26, they took that crossing guard away due to funding issues. And so, as you mentioned, we did basically painted bulb outs and kind of traffic calming measures to improve safety. So we felt that that crossing guard could potentially be more useful in another location instead of bringing it
oh,
back there.
so this kind of begs the question of any other intersections around Corte Madera that could get that similar safe street treatment of bulb outs with bollards and things that could be under our bid estimate, which around 75 grand and up has to go out to bid. So if we could engineer safe intersections to negate the need of a crossing guard for less than 75 grand, I think it would uh, have a lot of dividends.
Ye yes. I mean, I don't know. In a lot of people's minds, there's um, even like great improvements to the intersection don't really equate to having somebody a crossing guard there to walk you across the street. But I see what you mean. Definitely, it helps if we don't have a crossing guard to install complete streets improvements.
Yeah, that was, I guess, part of what I was going to bring up, which is structural inconvenience. Thereby it being structurally inconvenient to speed in any town, and that requires a lot of engineering. So, does anyone else have any questions on this matter?
Yeah, just a quick question. So the cycle, the 2026, 2030 cycle, that begins in the fall?
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Then I just had a question about getting some clarity. So the students that are crossing Hickory then ultimately cross Lakeside, and as they're continuing north towards Redwood High School. This is just a question about getting understanding the complete streets for Madera Gardens, but is there intention to be putting those flasher lights on Lakeside? Was that the solution for improving the safety of that crosswalk, along with the traffic circle and other things they're going to be doing at Lakeside and Birch?
Yeah, that's correct. We're actually planning to install the RFBs or the flashing, signals at both of those crossings for that path.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Thanks.
Do any members of the public have any public comment for this school crossing guard recertification? Yeah, feel free.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Seidler from WTB TAM. Hope you're all doing really well. I just wanted to follow up on a comment. I couldn't quite see who was making it. I apologize because I was behind the podium. But about the $75,000 threshold, for an improvement. And I think that's a really interesting. It was about how to make it safer. Was it Prince Royal?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really interesting. So I just kind of want to put the bug in your head that the quick build alternatives and quick build strategies with paint and plastic really offer a lot of opportunities with something called a protected intersection. Protected intersection. And so that might be something that as you consider those things, look at, and those are usually under $75,000, and they bring a lot of safety, to the neighborhood.
Yeah, I appreciate the quick build, cost-effective measures. It seems to kind of cut through the chase of all the bureaucracy and politicization of safe streets. So, if any other comments, not seeing any comments, we'll move on to project updates, numbers or 6 discussion items. A, review 2025 work plan accomplishments and approve 2026 work plan.
Yeah, I can take this one on as well, Nick. So normally we would hold this kind of earlier on, but unfortunately, like the last meeting got canceled just because of all the flooding impacts we were dealing with. So at this point, the 2026 work plan has already been basically decided by council. However, there's usually a midway revision. So if there's any priorities from the VPAC that for this work plan, we can take those to the mid-year change. But just to start, just wanted to go through our 2025 work plan accomplishments. So just as far as like kind of large construction, we've mostly completed Casa Buena complete streets. The project was complete except for where we had a conflict with PG&E. So we're working with them to try and get that sorted out. And I believe we will hopefully be able to finish, widening the road and completing the paving and the bike lane later this year. So if all goes to plan, that one will be done by the end of the year. Hart Street Connector Path was completed, as well as our bike rack expansion project. So those are a few big projects from last year. Some design and small projects we were working on. ADA self-assessment report, that was a multi-year effort, and the council just adopted it in January, so that's good. The AB 43 reduced speed limits, and AB 413 red curbs on high volume streets. So yeah, that was where we changed basically speed limits on a bunch of roads around town that were in basically residential or areas that have high traffic of pedestrians and bicyclists. And then the AB 413 was basically just adding red curb before crosswalks so that there's better visibility for people crossing the road. Next slide. Just continuing on, we're in design for Madera Gardens. That'll be constructed soon. Paradise Drive complete streets. This is from westward to the town limit. That one still in design. Now, I think I'm going to give another update on that later, but we're planning to build that next year. Lucky Drive cycle track, we received a grant for that project. Paradise Drive gap closure, we received a grant for that project. So those two are kind of ready to go into design in coming years. And then the Tamalpais Drive overcrossing project, that is a Caltrans project, but the town's been working very closely with them to try and improve, get better, basically bicycle facilities and kind of some aesthetic improvements and other things that will kind of make it a better project for the community. So that's like a summary of the BPAC related, work items from the 2025 work plan. And next slide. We'll go through the 2026 work plan. So I believe, hopefully you guys have a copy of this because there's kind of a lot included in here. We highlighted the items that are more BPAC related. So next slide, Nick. So just kind of going through them. I just mentioned this, but we're continuing coordination with Caltrans for the final design of the Tamalpais overcrossing project. Unfortunately, their project got delayed by PG&E as well. So they're not going to start until, I believe, 2028. So we're just continuing to work with them on that one. ADA self-assessment report, I don't, we just completed that, so that's done. And then looking down for multimodal transportation and road projects, we have Madera Gardens Complete Streets, and then a 2026 road resurfacing project, which will include the rest of Casa Buena, as well as just some paving on various roads around town. And then for design, we'll continue with Paradise Drive Complete Streets, and then we'll start design on the Lucky Drive multimodal improvements this year. Next slide. So those were kind of the main things that were BPAC related, but I definitely recommend just taking a look through the work plan. There's a lot in here, obviously like 51 items, and a lot of it is public work, so we certainly have our hands full. Yeah, happy to answer any questions you have.
For the gentleman from the WMTB, last time he presented a opportunity to continue the path that goes behind Trader Joe's and connects to the underpass, the Whipple Avenue path. And I was wondering if that was for consideration in terms of design.
No, it's not. It wasn't put on the work plan by council, and I was actually going to give an update on that project. So I can go into it a little bit more, but basically the town, while we are very supportive of that project, Transportation Authority of Marin is the lead agency, and so we have basically made the decision that it does not make sense for Corte Madera to try to move that project forward unilaterally. It really needs to be done by TAM or another lead agency to take it through the various jurisdictions. So I could dig into that a little bit more, but long story short, it did not get into the work plan.
Okay.
I believe that was Matt Hartzell referring to that as the Whale Trail
Yeah, the
with
Whale Trail.
the whale mural that was recently painted under the Warnham Drive underpassing. So definitely worth doing, just needs some county muscle behind it. Anyways, any other questions or any public comment on this matter?
There's no hands raised online.
Okay,
I have a question just about the Corte Madera Complete Streets.
sure. Yeah.
So Madera Garden Complete Streets. It's here listed as 2025, 26. I was curious to know when that is actually going to be started.
Yeah, so that one is it's actually we open bids on Thursday, so we should have a contractor within the next week, and then typically it'll take about 3 weeks to get the contract in order and all that. So potentially we will be starting late March, early April on that one.
Thanks.
Okay. Seeing no other public comment or comments from fellow members, we'll move on to if any public comment, yeah, feel free. Yeah, sure. Yeah. This is on the agenda or?
Chris,
Oh, okay.
the one who's speaking.
So,
Good evening. Actually, I was going to bring it up under the item that's a little bit following it, but Chris brought it up on this item regards to Mike's question
okay.
about the north-south greenway segment. So Chris, thank you for those comments. I really appreciate that. That was good. It was Matthew and I had come down to meet with Chris and talk about that. And what I wanted to do is give you some background as well as everybody in the city of Corte Madera. So the first one is just an idea of where the pathway is and how it's significant So, it might be a little bit overstated. Perhaps the greatest gap closure project would be the Alto Tunnel, but behind the Alto Tunnel is this segment. And when this segment's completed, the county is, or Santa Fe's building Anderson to Second Street to Mission, and Smart's working on top of Porto Suelo Hill to North San Pedro Road. So when this segment's complete, you'll be able to ride your bicycle and walk from Menke Park all the way to McGinnis Park. In addition, this is the area where there's the biggest traffic in Marin County. There's more traffic in Marin County in this segment than anywhere. In the mirror section just above that, from Anderson to the train station, that's the most used segment of the North-South Greenway. And our assertion is that this is going to be the second most, or maybe even bigger than that section, because the entire Ross Valley kind of empties into it, and to get to Smart and get to the ferry terminal. And so it's a real needed segment that the county and Corte Madera has prioritized in its plans, and has a segment that Corte Madera owns, that Corte Madera can work on in their plan without TAM's approval to do so. And there seems to be something going on at TAM, but I think it's a good idea that members of the BPAC can ask the question, well, why aren't they doing it? And so that leads to the second document, which is, you'll see that segment was supposed to have been completed in January 2020. And it was taken off the agendas in January of 2018. So it's been 8 years, not 8, so 20, my math straight, 6, 4 and 6, 10 years since, not 10 years, it's 8 years. So 8 years since anything's been going on with it, even though it's supposed to be done in 2020. And so again, so you as the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee for Santa Fe, for Corte Madera, need to be asking the question, what's really going on here? And then the last document is going to give you just a little check-in on reality. So check that one out. This is really interesting. That segment has been desired to be built for over half a century.
Jeez.
For over half a century. And look at the Corte Madera's 2 times in 2024, they signed up and identified it as a priority project. It's the top priority project in your plan right now of your historical priority projects. And look at all the people who signed up to say this is the right thing to do. And so what we urge you to do, and even though staff, is saying that, we respect the heck out of staff. They've done an incredible job. And, we salute them for all the projects they've brought across the finish line. I got to tell you, top of the list. And sometimes you got to say, what the heck? What's really going on here? So we need you to add your voices to that group of people that's saying, what the heck is going on here? Why did they derail that project? And why is the most traffic congested area in Marin County not building a bike path that gets to the 2 best transit systems in Marin County, the ferry terminal and Smart? Something doesn't meet the eye, and we hope that you don't stop here and don't accept that. We don't like doing that, because they, of course, they do a wonderful job, and again, we salute them for that. And we're looking for you to really look into it. And you guys have led through the county with all your actions. And we really ask you to keep asking that question. What the heck is going on here? And we want to add you to the voice of people that say, let's get it built. Let's get it done. This is important. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, and we appreciate your passion, and we encourage you to keep carrying this torch, because it's worthy carrying. So we will, seeing no further comment, we will move on to number 7, project updates. A, solar-powered radar speed feedback signs and bike path advisory signs on the San Clemente bike path. And Nick?
Yeah, I'm going to give the update on that. So this was an item that we brought to BPAC a few months ago, a couple meetings ago. Since then, we have installed the 2 solar speeds feedback signs on San Clemente Path. They're mostly operational. We're having some issues with the radar capturing some of the vehicles going by. We're working with the vendor to get a different radar system, an external system, to better direct it to just capture the bicyclists. But this is a 15-inch sign or 15-inch display that when it shows the cyclist speed, but when they go over the limit, the 15 mile per hour limit, it flashes slow down. And we have one in each direction. We actually modified the location slightly. So the locations here that are shown here are where they were installed. And once we took a closer look at it, originally we were thinking at the very beginning and very end of the straightaways, but once we were out there, we thought it was better to put it closer to where the path meanders a little bit, and there's some site issues with vegetation and the path kind of doing a little wiggle. So we did put it a little bit closer to that location to get folks to slow down before they hit that kind of more safety critical area. And then just a tag on there, there's also, I know someone brought up vegetation management, and there was a bush in that location that we also trimmed to give better sight, the sight line of sight. The other item that was part of that, this item that we brought to BPAC a couple meetings ago was to install the yield to pedestrian signs, and we've completed that as well in a few locations on San Clemente Path. There were about 3 locations where we installed these R9-6 signs, and then also the other location that's shown here in the photo. And yeah, that's all I have for this radar feedback item. If there are any questions or discussion items.
Isn't the on the previous slide, isn't the your speed normally paired with a speed limit sign?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure if we have it elsewhere on the site, but it does give the feedback where if they're going over the 15 mile per hour, it tells them to slow down. So in some regard, it is a speed limit sign.
It just to touch on that too, I think we talked about this a few times, but unless the town actually does a speed survey and figures out basically 80th percentile, 85th percentile, does all that, like we can't really enforce speed limits on paths. So we chose to go without the speed sign. I mean, we could put it up, but it really is just there for I don't know, as an attempt to slow people down. It's not enforceable.
But I mean, besides enforceability, just information about what the speed, there is a law for the speed limit of the path, right?
The prima facie speed limit for paths is 25 in the state. Unless we did our own study to try to reduce that, that would be the speed limit.
Okay, got it. That probably won't help then.
Yeah.
Any other comment from former members or current members? And I'll make a comment about this. So this was the old Northwestern Pacific Railroad right of way, and it took the train from Eureka all the way to Tiburon. So this pathway went through Madera del Presidio and went through the Ring Mountain train tunnel all the way behind Bel Air School in Tiburon and through Blackie's pasture where they had a giant redwood trestle, and up people were taking the train on this path up until 1967 in Corte Madera. So all these tract housing was built in the early 60s. So for a few years, people could take the train right on that path and to Tiburon. That begs the question of, people talk about the Alto Tunnel. We also, Corte Madera, have the Ring Mountain Tunnel, and that's another can of worms. But this is one of our narrower multi-use paths compared to the multi-use path behind Redwood High School, which is significantly wider and it has a gravel shoulder on it. So if we're seeing a lot of conflict between users, that kind of begs the question, is this pathway a little bit too narrow, and do we have the right of way of adding maybe 4 feet to it and hopefully planting more trees along it? Because along multi-use pathways, they've done studies on this. It's called optical calming. When bicyclists are surrounded by a row of trees, they naturally ride slower. than if they don't have a row of trees. They see the trees as an obstacle that they might hit if they're going too fast. Same thing for drivers. So I talk about, street trees as another way of traffic calming. We're Corte Madera, that what that means in Spanish, chop wood. And we have one of the lowest tree canopy coverage rates in the county, around 12% tree canopy coverage. Neighboring Mill Valley has over 40% tree canopy coverage. And that is a big impediment to people recreating if they don't have shade in the summer, especially now it's getting a lot hotter, if you've noticed recently. I don't want to talk your guys' ears off, but those are some food for thought in terms of ways to fix speeding and user conflict on this path. So seeing no further comments.
I do have a comment online.
Yeah, feel free to.
Warren Wells, you can speak now.
Hi, this is Warren Wells with the Marin County Bicycle Coalition. I just kind of to that last note. Sorry, I'm zoomed in with my family at dinner. There is a bill this year. I was trying to look it up. I'm happy to send it to the committee afterward that would set a prima facie speed limit on multi-use paths at 15 miles an hour. I don't have that number in front of me, but just FYI, that is something that is at least proposed in the legislature this season. So sorry, I don't have the bill number on hand. Thanks so much.
Okay, we have another public comment.
Patrick Seidler again from WTB-TAM. So, part of our background, we study international best practices for bicycle pedestrian transportation. And we had the opportunity to put our offices in the Netherlands for 7 years and work with CRO, which is the Dutch agency that actually makes all the design guidelines for the Dutch cycling system. And I sat on the European Cycling Industry's board of directors for 8 years and got to work with them extensively on it. And so I have a couple of suggestions for you when you're trying to reduce conflicts. And it turns out in the United States, Minneapolis has the best practice, which is that their pathways, they try to make them 21 to 22 feet wide. And they make 8-foot segments in each direction for cyclists and a 6-foot segment for pedestrians. Because human beings, as the Dutch say in their design guidelines, are social animals. And so they like to talk to each other. So two cyclists riding like to talk to each other. You probably see them on the road for people screaming at them, why are those cyclists riding together? Because they're human. And so anyway, so what that does is you kind of accommodate that. And so that's about 8 feet. And then for humans, about 6 feet riding together. The other thing is regarding speed, the sign suggestion is a really good one because that's biofeedback. People respond to that well. Some of the best ways to handle it, though, is something like a texture. And so you'll see that on the bike path down in Mill Valley, the Greenway down in Mill Valley. They did that in response to comments that we made to them and showed them some examples how to do it. And they put like a brick texture on some pavement or concrete that was on it. And it helps a little bit. They didn't do it quite as much as you need to do it to kind of get a cyclist to, it's like when you're riding in your car and you got hit like a rumble strip or something like that, you start paying a little bit closer attention. Like when you go out in Nicasio and they have the bumps in the road as you're coming toward the school, when the speed limit goes down to 25 miles an hour. So the same type of thing. That is the most effective way to get the cyclist's attention to slow down, is to get some kind of texture or something going like that. And then the most important thing is that separation of pedestrians and bikes when you get to a certain level of density and you're approaching that. And that'll become more apparent in the future when more people are riding their cycles, bicycles, and walking when more segments of the Greenway get completed.
Thank you for your comment. I believe you were referencing stamped concrete, which when they're pouring a fresh slab of concrete, they'll put in a grid pattern into it to replicate a cobblestone look. So riding over these stamped concrete cobblestones slows down bicyclists, pedestrians, drivers, and yeah, it's very underutilized and is cheap, cost effective. Thank you for your comments. We have project update 7B, Paradise Drive at Golden Hind Passage.
Yes. So just a quick update on that. So on Paradise Drive at Golden Hind Passage near Cove School, we recently installed an advanced RRFB, rectangular rapid flashing beacon. This was, you can see in the second bottom picture where there's a school crossing ahead sign. It's kind of hard to see, but the flashing beacons between the two signs. That gets activated when someone at the crosswalk hits the crossing action button there and allows the advance warning to start to signal that someone's crossing. And the reason behind that was some issues with vegetation management and line of sight for the cars coming Paradise Drive. So that was another item that we recently completed.
Any comments from fellow members here or any public comment on this matter? I will add to this, I've seen a lot of really close calls on this intersection, and it reminds me of the Belmont Tam DMV intersection on Tamil Madera Boulevard, where the town, after seeing so much conflict, put a whole row of bollards, K71 or K91, to prevent last minute lane changes and aggressive driving. And that could be something, a cheap, cost effective way to put a line of bollards right before the crosswalk on the center line there, just to slow down and narrow the lane. With roadways, the narrower, the safer usually. So if any other comment here on this matter? Okay, so not seeing any comment, we will move on to project update C, North-South Greenway Gap Closure Project Update. And
All right, I'll take this one on. So already kind of dove into it a bit before, but this is kind of a reoccurring request to put on the agenda. So we just wanted to kind of provide the current status. So as mentioned, Transportation Authority Marin is still the project lead, and the town is, fully supports them in moving forward with the project. We've been told there's no funding currently available. So that's kind of where the project is right now. It's it could be moved forward, but there's just no money. And then just a few other items that kind of, with our talks with TAM have kind of identified. The project is multi-jurisdictional and only a small portion is within Corte Madera property, and also within town limits. So if you look basically from, where one end to the other, where they want to build the path, the Corte Madera owns a portion of land right next to Shorebird Marsh. That would kind of be the south end of the path. Then the path goes up and along Smart Right-of-Way. It would have to cut across through private property, which that portion hasn't really been identified yet. And then it basically, at that point, you're in Larkspur, and then it has to go up Redwood Highway to connect to the existing path that was recently built. So it's fairly complicated as far as right-of-way goes, which is, the reason I mentioned that Corte Madera does not, it wouldn't be really appropriate for us to lead this project because we only are dealing with a small portion. The next part, the project needs to include flood protection on the Smart Right-of-Way, as demonstrated by the recent king tides. So anyone who was kind of in that area during, right after the new year could see that there was literally tidal water coming over the Smart Right-of-Way, down Industrial, and flooded that whole east side of the freeway, as well as the Highway 101 and into Corte Madera. So, we're not just going to build this bike path without thinking about flood control too. They has to go together, because otherwise, we build a bike path that may potentially need to get torn out if we ever need to raise the Smart Right-of-Way to build a levee there. So, it just, it has to be well thought out, and unfortunately, that also ends up involving, more complex permitting. There's more stakeholders involved, and then higher costs, but it really does need to be included. And then finally, kind of just adds on to what I've been saying, but the project should not be done piecemeal by various agencies. That could lead to wasting resources if portions have to be rebuilt, or if, and also we just don't want the path to be disjointed if the various agencies build it differently and not to the same standards. Also would be an issue if one didn't build it high enough for flood control. So it's just, there was suggestion that Corte Madera just build the path, next to Shorewood Marsh, but then we're building a path to nowhere that's likely not going to be used, and wouldn't know when the other agencies would continue it on. So that's basically just our hesitations with the project to date. We coordinate with TAM, and we really hope that they can find funding to move it forward. And I think it will be a good project once they're able to do that. So that's pretty much all the updates as of now. And I can answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you for that information, Chris. Any other comments from BPAC and any comments from public? We've seen one public comment.
Hello, again, this is Patrick Seidler from WTBTM. Chris, I want to thank you for your comments. I just wanted to kind of shine some light onto things. I hope you guys take this in, because, we've been doing this for 33 years, and I can't tell you how many times we've run into a situation like this where we said, no, you can't do this. It can't be done. Too tough, multi-jurisdictional. And it's nothing, I'm not harping on Chris at all, because he's really terrific to work with and a really good person. But look at number one reason is the Transportation Authority. However, there is no funding currently available. My question is Corte Madera aware of the $630,000 that someone from Mill Valley's town council got to pave the Horse Hill bike path that was never put in public discussion? So there's $630,000. We could do a engineering design of this. We could do the environmental clearances. Look at the document that I gave you, the second document. It shows that the environmental clearances were 1/3 of the way done when they stopped the project. There's 100% engineering on this project that the Transportation Authority of Marin already has in their files. We got it too. And so the point of the story is, what we need to do is kind of like, let's shine some sunshine on it. All right. And we need you guys to get interested. Chris, we need the town of Corte Madera, town council. And it is a multi-jurisdictional issue, and a town can't take it on. The county of Marin was the agency leading the multi-jurisdictional issue. And Chris is right. There is a pass-through issue that's going on. But if Corte Madera just took their pathway to Industrial Boulevard, that water is coming in from Corte Madera Creek down by the bridge. It's not coming in from the berm. And, we've seen designs from the county, from what we have, that show how to build that pathway to keep king tides out of it. So, don't, who's that man behind the curtain? Let's find out. And so I'm urging you to keep asking those questions. Multi-jurisdictional? Yes. Everywhere in Marin County is multi-jurisdictional. You walk 10 feet, you're in another jurisdiction. That slows things down. We've built tens and dozens of multi-jurisdictional projects in Marin County. So we need you to earnestly look at this. You are part of that multi-jurisdictional group. This is a critical path for Corte Madera. This is a critical path for Southern Marin County. This is a critical path for everybody using the transportation in the most congested area in Marin County. So how is it they found $630,000 to pave a path that's going to receive 1/100th as much traffic as this pathway here is going to receive? How could they find that? I would like you guys asking that question. I'd like City of Corte Madera asking those questions, because if we work together, we can raise this up as a priority, and we need to. It's been too long. It's been 8 years since they dropped it off, and we need to put this back out in front. So thank you again. Please shine some sunlight on this. Let's get it out in the daylight. Ask questions. How'd they get $630,000? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Next on the 7 project updates is the D, Paradise Drive complete streets westward to town limit.
Yeah, I'll just keep this one brief because I've given, lots of updates on this. We're still trying to close out the environmental phase. We've been dealing with NEPA, which is the federal environmental requirement, for over 2 years now. It's unfortunately just gotten dragged out and dragged out. So it's been a bit frustrating, but I think we're really almost to the finish line. So hopefully we'll be there soon. We currently have the 90% plans and kind of have everything else sorted out. And so we're currently aiming at construction in spring of 2027. Um, so let's see, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, I think that's it. And I believe once we have the environmental done and we're a little bit farther down the road, we will come back and bring those 90% plans to BPAC to take a look at. So kind of aiming probably for summer, fall to do that. So with that, if there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Any members of BPAC have any questions on this matter? And any members of the public have any questions or comment?
There are no hands. Sorry, there are no hands.
Oh, no hands? Okay, yeah, if you have a comment.
Will the project include like bike traffic, or will it be more bike friendly?
Yes, it will. We're building a multi-use path. Basically, if you drive down Paradise, there's already a multi-use path on the south side of the road, west of Westward. And so we're going to continue out east all the way to basically Robin Drive, but pretty much as far as we can go towards the town limit.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this up. This has been, a harder egg to crack than you'd think. And it's been tough working, it's what you've been saying with PG&E and moving those power lines, and also the threat of rising sea level water on that roadway. And I'd like to mention there are housing plans, I believe, on Paradise Drive in Tiburon near Paradise K. I saw an IJ article, so roughly 90 units they're expected. So that's 90 to 100 to 200 more cars are going to be going down Paradise Drive if that housing project goes through. It's part of the housing element. So some things to consider, if we're getting more residents, which is good and all that, and building more housing to hopefully lower down the price, we have to accommodate all these new residents and the workers coming, and hopefully getting as many of them out of their cars safely and efficiently. So things to consider. Thank you for that presentation, Chris. We will move on to number 8, future agenda items. So do any other members of BPAC have any future agenda items or infrastructure requests?
Well, I guess a couple of them at this point. First one being the Alto Tunnel, having Warren Wells present his updates on that project in terms of getting it agendized for even future city council meetings. That would be one I'd like to have him present. And then second is, let's talk about this whale trail. Maybe there could be a more, let's dig into what it would take to actually do this. And if there's something, what's Corte Madera's role in that multi jurisdiction complexity?
Any other future agenda items from BPACers? I'll have 2 suggestions. One suggestion is for daylighting, painting enforcement, or I guess just for the town to paint these intersections, notably on Harbor Drive on the east side, right off of Paradise Drive. There's multiple crosswalks. You'll see the yellow ADA traction pad, and there's no red painted curb on 20 feet of both sides of the crosswalk. And I've seen multiple times where cars are blocking the crosswalk, and that bill was passed over a year ago, and it's taken cities longer than they thought to get out that big bucket of red paint and start painting those curbs. So beyond that, another suggestion was for a lighting study from Warren Drive along the bike path there to the Lazy Boy intersection. That bike path has no lights. It's never had lights, both for cars on the street and for bikes for the past 60 years. More so, we don't have any street lights from Golden Hind Passage all the way to the Tiburon town border on Paradise Drive. We have maybe a few token lights near that school on near Westward Drive, but past there, there's no street lights, and a lot of the speeding and conflicts are a result of no street lamps. And this is a matter I've brought forward to the town, and I showed photos of cars crashing, cars after they crashed on Paradise Drive in Prince Royal. Another photo of two people running in the street in the gutter right on next to Paradise and Seawolf Passage on that north side of Paradise Drive, where there isn't a sidewalk, or there never was a sidewalk for over 60 years when this part of town was built. And I remember RJ, the former head of DPW, saying, we could potentially put a 15-foot wide sidewalk. That's how wide that right of way is. It would be almost one of the widest sidewalks in town, and space for benches and some trees and all that. So that's something to think about. That I would combine with that westward to town limit Paradise Drive project, so that you have a fully laced up safe street project from from San Clemente all the way to the town border. So things to consider in terms of project completion and thoroughness and safe streets and street lighting. So anyone else have any future agenda items, or if a member of the public, feel free to comment.
Tom Knopfsiger from 29 El Camino Drive. I used to be on the BPAC years and years ago, but the Tamalpais Drive overpass over 101, I'd like an update on that, I guess, in the future, because we ride over that all the time. It's the only way to get from, if you're riding anything other than a scooter around the little curly cues or something, or walking, we were lucky to get some lines put on the road 8 years ago or something. Before that, there were really no lines. So it'd be nice to know where, and I know it's what is it, Caltrans or whatever, but it's very unsafe riding over and back with the high-speed lanes going from Corte Madera, Tamalpais Drive into San Francisco. Try riding that with, you're riding your bike and people cut in front of you or cut behind you. Like a green strip or something or a dotted lines, anything would be better than what we have right now, or especially like the high-speed lane going into San Francisco. So it'd be nice to have an update. I know Caltrans was hot on this maybe 2 or 3 years ago. In fact, they were like, it's going to get done like next month or something, but nothing's happened. So it'd be good to get an update on that as well. So thank you.
So yeah, that's that project is overdue over 60 years. And on the way to this meeting, I biked over that overpass, and I didn't feel safe at all. So we're on the same page here. And I recently, or not recently, I think in August or June, at a bike advocacy event, meet and greet. It was through WTB TAM. I was talking with Pat Ravazio of the Corte Madera Council, and she told me an update on that project. She said, it was originally around 26, $28 million. And she said her updated figure was around 38 or 40 million. Don't quote me on that, permanently on these figures, but we're in a very inflationary environment, and we need to nip things in the bud. When we wait too little and too late, things become too expensive. And I
Paint on roads.
road,
Like,
yeah.
I know they want to hang a pedestrian, bridge and a multi-use pedestrian bridge off the north side of the thing or whatever, so people can walk between the malls. We're talking every day we ride over that on our bikes. And I guess we're lucky that we have a line now, because for many years we rode over there and there wasn't even a line separating the wall from the traffic, right? And there were actually no lines on that entire bridge for the 4 lanes of traffic, right? So paint is what we need. If you go from the mall into Corte Madera, it's another high-speed lane behind you. So give us something to ride our bikes on, so people even know, like, oh yeah, there's a place to it's paint. It's all paint. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Yeah, I know it's very frustrating dealing with these multi-jurisdictional quandaries, of you go 1 inch, you have to beg the state and Caltrans to do what they should have done years ago. I- And then it seems like you're powerless because a lot of the people at Caltrans were not elected, and to get in touch with them can be kind of an uphill battle sometimes. But I feel like the town has an obligation to explore their right of way leading up to that overpass and seeing what they can do to potentially maybe narrow vehicular lanes a little bit, and then widen the allotted bicycle lane with maybe an extra foot or two of paint width. I know, people say paint is as good as a entry level for infrastructure, but it doesn't ultimately save lives. And, we could have bigger discussions with Caltrans. It might take years for this 15-foot multi-use cantilevered pathway to be built on the side of the highway, and for them to take away the clover leaves and reconfigure where people are getting onto the bus. Because a lot of times, not just bicyclists are endangered going over that overpass, but people walking on those bus pads to take the bus up 101, they're walking across cars entering the highway at highway speeds, and they've turned into a game of Frogger, which is unacceptable. And that whole Tamalpais overcrossing is problematic for many reasons, for bicyclists, pedestrians, bus users. And it's one of the rare moments where Caltrans has actually taken on the onus and responsibility for the damage they've done 60 years ago. The first bike lane in California was built in Davis in the late 60s. What they did is they put those concrete curb stops you see at parking lots, so your tire hits. They put those right along the shoulder of a roadway, and sunk them into the concrete. And that was the first protected bike lane in California in Davis, late 60s. And granted, that's a college town and has a lot of young, forward-thinking people come in, thousands of them every year. And ultimately, the bigger discussion is about demographics and whether we can get younger, forward-thinking people on our councils and the county supervisors to really think differently, and not assume everyone's going to be driving a car. And cars are great, and they've advanced society, but they've turned into the cigarettes of transportation. And I hope California can, regulate car dependency and danger and car vehicular violence the same way they've regulated tobacco and cigarette use. So that's bigger discussion, but thank you for your comments. And if anyone has any other future agenda items, if not, we'll go to an adjournment. And I'll let Nick take it from here.
Yeah, I think that's it. So thank you very much. Yeah, we're adjourned.
Well, meeting adjourned. I'll do the gavel.